What's up, the world? Um, this is your boy Tommy Smathip. Um, and I just want to come and talk about a couple of things that got on my nerves last night. Jordan fans out in effect. Hater fans out in effect. Right? You have three types of people that really dislike LeBron James. Those are generally racist. Um, uh, Michael Jordan fans, Kobe Bryant fans, who some have converted because LeBron likes Kobe, so now it's kind of like less Kobe Bryant fans, but still some, and people that LeBron James is beating. Right, so team fans of teams LeBron is beaten over and over again, and actual people LeBron James is beating over and over again. So those are the people. LeBron has a huge army of people who just prey on his downfall, constantly are upset. And so I could not imagine my entire career hating on LeBron James. Like, that has to be a very annoying sports career. Like, I mean, sports experience to want this guy to fail so often and then just have to watch him like just excel at everything. Right? Imagine you are an idiot who, when LeBron James was 17-year-old saying it was all hype, right? And he comes in and just starts smashing immediately. Still saying it's all hype, but you got to have a reason. You're Skip Bayless. You have to have a reason, for why what you're saying, which makes no sense, somehow makes sense. So you're like, oh, well, yeah, he's a great player, but he doesn't make the final shot. It's like that. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The majority of people don't hit final shots because it's when you're a good player, it's often rare that you have to take them. Um, but I was like, okay, if this idiot wants to take that and run with it, let him run with it. But then when you start to realize that Skip Bayless, all right, can you turn it down? When you start to realize that Skip Bayless has influenced our entire generation of people to say the dumbest things in the world and somehow believe they're true is amazing to me. It's like the whole narrative around this championship, because LeBron has a narrative around every championship he wins. The first one he won when he literally beat possibly one of the greatest teams of his generation in the Spurs. They said, oh, well, it didn't count because LeBron James, what do you say? It doesn't count because LeBron James. LeBron James had to get with Bosh and Wade, even though the team that they played against had more All Stars than the people on his team. Tim Duncan is not. I mean, LeBron James is the best player in basketball. D Wade was a top 5 player. Bosh I wouldn't even put it in the top 15, but we'll just say that we got Wade, LeBron, and Bosh, who I think maybe is a top 15 player, not a top 5, definitely not a top 10 player in the NBA at the time he was on the Heat. At that point in time, they had those three and a bunch of league minimum players in which they had they had to basically have 38, 39-year-old people playing valuable minutes for them. Fine, but that was the point. But the narrative around that championship was, oh, it didn't matter that they won because they were playing Kevin Durant and the Thunder, and Kevin Durant and the Thunder, they're young, right? So yeah, he beat a bunch of young people. He should have won that series, even though they came when the series started. Even Skip Bayless was saying he was going to lose to the Thunder. Then when he beat the Thunder, he turned it around and said, well, they're young, he should have beaten them, and it was only because Kevin Durant and LeBron James practiced together during the offseason, so he had a mind control over Kevin Durant. That was the bullshit narrative after that championship. The second championship LeBron won was the Spurs one, and that's the one everybody say Ray Allen saved him for, right? Third one was the Cleveland Cavaliers, even though LeBron James was largely the reason why they came from 3-1 down. It did not matter, right? It was you would think LeBron James wasn't averaging a triple double, wasn't didn't score 9 of the 18 points or so that got them back into the game, back into the game and leading during a critical stretch in that final game. Nobody remembers that. They just remember the one shot Kyrie Irving hit. They don't remember the shot, all the millions of shots LeBron hit before Kyrie Irving hit that shot. But it doesn't matter. The thing I realize is that they're always a narrative. And it's like, I kind of understand what they were going through, right? I remember when the Warriors were winning a championship, even though I had an actual gripe. I don't think they have an actual gripe. Most of them are just haters. But the Warriors, I wanted to lose because I felt like it's they literally made it so nobody else can win. And it was because of a glitch in the system that allowed them to do it that other people can't compete with. If you don't know what happened with the Warriors, there was a spike. There was a spike in the cap the year Kevin Durant became a free agent, which allowed him to get in to the Warriors, and they had to lose absolutely zero pieces. He just joined the 7-3 win team, and they really didn't have to lose anybody because the cap had spiked. So since the cap spiked, they had the money to just put him on the team. It was an anomaly because instead of they had a bargaining agreement, and instead of them spreading the cap out over a couple years, they immediately just spread it out in 1 year, which ended up causing chaos because nobody else could compete. Because after he jumped on the Warriors, other people couldn't come together because the cap tax they would have got, the luxury tax would have been ridiculous. They would have got bombarded. So even the Cleveland Cavaliers couldn't add another piece like a Kevin Durant to that already thing. And people was like, well, he already had Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, and they already had Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala. We didn't even talk about their role players who were 10 times better than any role players that the Miami Heat had. Miami Heat had Birdman, Norris Cole. Mind you, most of these players after LeBron left the team did not stay in the NBA long, right? Birdman, Norris Cole, freaking Mike Miller ended up retiring. So did Shane Battier. These were pivotal players on those teams, right? Players who weren't even playing 2 years after LeBron left the team. But we gonna act like LeBron was playing with a super team. If you want to believe LeBron James was playing a super team, then I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you because you are the most. People will just say stuff, right? Like I said, a super team is not just 3 All-Stars. 3 or more All-Stars. A super team is 3 or more All-Stars surrounded by supporting players that are better. The supporting player, namely a bench that is almost as good as anybody's bench in the league, right? The Bulls had Scottie, Rodman, and Michael Jordan. They also had Ron Harper, Steve Kerr. Who was that defender? That other defender they had? Can't even remember his name. The point is, they had the Bulls had one of the highest scoring benches in the league, right? Even during Michael Jordan's first championship, and I'm not 100% if it was just top 5 or the top when Jordan won his second three-peat. But the first three-peat, they had the highest scoring bench in the league. So when he had Grant and Pippen, so. I mean, it's a super team. You have to have more than just the 3 stars. You have to have also supporting stars around them. The Spurs, they had the big 4 in Kawhi, Manu, Tony Parker, and Duncan. But they also had one of the best benches and one of the deepest teams in the league. The Warriors. Yes, they lost Andrew Bogut, but they switched Andrew Bogut and anybody and their mama would switch Andrew Bogut and Barnes for Kevin Durant. That's not much of a thing. Kevin Durant's 7 foot, so he can take over the blocking duties and that Bogut did. And he's a better offensive player than Barnes, so he makes up for those 2 things. So you have Kevin Durant and pretty much the same team that just won 73 wins, who had the best bench in the league with Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, David West. I mean, come on, right? I mean, that team. David West was a former All Star. Iguodala is a Hall of Famer. Um, uh, 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 Livingston, one of the best six men in the league. I mean, that team was ridiculous, right? So I hated that team because in the end, it's like they took advantage of a glitch in the system that other people can't adapt to. Like we can have the star, but we can't have the bench that you guys have, along with 4 All-Stars, 5 if you count Iguodala, who is not wasn't an All-Star anymore, but still is a Hall of Famer and one of the best. Reason why he was pivotal even this year for the Heat getting to the championship, because he's such a seasoned and intelligent player, which is why I think LeBron wanted him for the Lakers. But when you look at that type of talent, and then Kevin Durant to come on TV and say, "Oh, I'm proud of all my championships." Well, you can be proud of them. That doesn't mean the rest of the world is. Nobody's putting your championships on the pedestal, and I think that burns him because at the end of the day, the whole narrative that he beat LeBron mano a mano. I mean, you got to go get your head checked. No, mano a mano was him on the Thunder and LeBron on the Heat. That was mano a mano, and it wasn't close. He got beat 4-1. Even when LeBron was on the Cavs, they were winning. They were possession or two from losing those games. So imagine what would have happened. People always ordered it. Well, they swept the Cavs. Yeah, it took them overtime in one game, and in all the other games, I think they only had one game where they blew the Cavaliers out. So that means LeBron James, even with the talent that he had around him, which was no talent, when he was winning with Jordan, the same team that was the worst team in the league after he left, was the team he took to the NBA Finals. But we just forget that. Like, that the only piece they lost. They still had Kevin Love. They still had all those other pieces that everybody thought was such a great addition to LeBron the year before. They had all those pieces. And guess what happened? When LeBron left, they went from being the best team in the East to lottery picks. When Kevin Durant left the Thunder, I think they won like 10 less games than they won the year before. When D-Wade left the Heat, they were actually better without him, right? So you look at a lot of Dirk but they were older guys, so I obviously cut D-Wade and Dirk some credit, some slack because they were older. But majority of superstars, when they lead teams, their teams do not crumble. I mean, they're just not. They either were bad before they left, or they either barely got worse when they left, or they were better when they left. So it's like LeBron James is an anomaly, and no matter how many, like I said, I could not imagine being that, because you end up chasing your tail, because you have to work so hard to discredit LeBron that you end up in your assault on LeBron, you always end up catching friendly fire, right? When you start opening up your guns and shooting all these shots at LeBron, you forget that other people that you love are in that same ilk. The whole narrative that LeBron James doesn't take the final shot is ridiculous when he's hit more buzzer beaters in playoff history than anybody in history. And people say, well, he's played more games. Well, if you can't do something, it doesn't matter how many games you played. If you can't do it, you can't do it. It doesn't change because you shoot more of them. And two, even though this goes without saying, let's go ahead and say it, he has the highest percentage too. So that means out of all the shots he shot, he's hit the highest percentage of those shots. Michael Jordan is atrocious. Kobe Bryant is worse than he was. So you look at, Kobe Bryant was atrocious, and Michael Jordan shot worse than Kobe did. So what is your reasoning for saying this about LeBron other than just being a hater, right? And they're like, well, I hope he doesn't take pride for the championship. Dude, it must really suck to be you right now, because even when the Warriors won, it's like, dude, ain't nobody taking credit for those championships. Them the same people that was throwing the Warriors. LeBron is 0-8, and LeBron is 3-6 and 3-5 in the final. All these are the same people. So when LeBron was losing to a team with 5 Hall of Famers on it, that counted against him. Even though he went to the finals with 0 Hall of Famers next to him. If that is the case, with 0 Hall of Famers against 5, and he gets discredited for that, right? He came down from. This is 2 years in a row. He lost with Kyrie and Kevin Love, right? Against 5 Hall of Famers to his 2 impossible, right? He was a heavy underdog in that first series against Kevin Durant and the Warriors. Second season, you guys counted both of those against him, right? Both of those went against him. So let me get it straight. When LeBron has something bad happens in his career, it does not matter what the stakes are against him. He gets buried for it, right? As if LeBron, there are still idiots who believe Michael Jordan, who had no 3-point shot, would have beat the Warriors with Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, who would have at least, at the very least, given Michael Jordan some matchup problems in defensively. And Draymond Green, who was one of the best defenders who basically evolved the game of basketball with playing a 6'8" or 6'9" player at small forward, 2-time defensive player of the year. Right? That guy. They say a guy with no 3-point shot would have beat the Warriors, right? So you can say whatever you want to say. Michael Jordan, without Scottie Pippen and Rodman, wasn't snipping the playoffs, let alone beating though. You saw in that documentary when Pippen sat out over contract disputes, the Bulls were struggling without Scottie Pippen then against far inferior competition. But you trying to tell me Michael Jordan would have beat the Warriors without Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman? Come on, dude. Whatever crack you smoking, that's some dangerous stuff. Leave it alone. Because it's retarded to me. It's like they just make up narratives in which they can say stuff. And then when LeBron does, because 90% of the time they'll say LeBron can't do stuff, and then he'll do it, and they left with egg on their face. And instead of them just admitting I was an idiot and I shouldn't have said that, they just ignore it. Doesn't matter. He's still 3-6 in the final. Well, say what you want to say. Because whether he's 3-6 in the final, I've said this for years. As time goes by and people get older, LeBron James will be considered the best basketball player of all time because most of these people won't watch Jordan. And then when they go back and watch Jordan, they really don't see nothing but a 6'6" Russell Westbrook shooting 70 shots a game and hitting 40% of them. And then people walking around saying he's the GOAT. All they see is a dude that destroyed the NBA, created some of the worst me-first players who came in and just destroyed the NBA by trying to chunk up a bunch of shots. And I had someone in my comment section you say that chunking up shots, like that's easy. That's like saying if Magic Johnson scored the most points, had the most assists and led league assists because he passed the ball more than other people. Yes, that would be. But getting an assist is harder than just chunking up shots. Chunking up shots, the shots can be bad. It doesn't take much to chunk up a shot. All you have to do is be selfish. So all you have to do is throw the ball, whether you're double guarded, triple guarded, quadruple guarded, you chunking up shots. They got a clip of Michael Jordan with 4 people on it, shooting a turnaround on the Wizards. That's how selfish he was. So you want to sit there and talk to me about how comparing Magic Johnson leading the league in assists to him chunking up 90 shots and making 40% of them? I'm sorry, those aren't the same two things, and you're an idiot for bringing it up. This is not true. You cannot sit up there and say that's the same thing. Shooting a bunch of shots requires nothing but selfishness. Getting a bunch of assists is hard to do because you actually have to put people in positions to score that are not yourself. So you have to put them in a position where your pass directly leads to points, not you just chunking up shots. So that's just an idiotic comparison. It doesn't make any sense to compare the two. And when you sit up here and you hear them now saying, "Oh, the cakewalk" and all this, and you see the same people, they're spamming it. That's how butthurt they are about LeBron James winning this championship. These people are spamming it. The same name, spamming it 20 times. They didn't have to play the Clippers for some strange reason. It's not their fault the Clippers weren't good enough to beat the... It's like they couldn't beat the Clippers. Yeah, but they beat the team that was good enough to beat the Clippers. So, and they beat them in a gentleman's sweep. It was 4-1. So, kind of still didn't... They only avoided the Clippers to be the team that was better than the Clippers. The Nuggets were playing better than the and this whole narrative that the Clippers were a worse matchup for the Lakers is ridiculous. The Clippers had no rim protection at all, which is why they lost to the Nuggets. People just don't even understand that. They lost to the Nuggets because they had no rim protection. That's why Jokic was able to do what he was doing. That's why Murray and them were walking to the rim. If you couldn't keep Jamal Murray from getting to the cup, you think you're going to keep LeBron James from getting to the cup? I swear people don't even need logic no more. Kawhi Leonard was struggling with Grant guarding him, right? Paul George was dying in the second round. You really think he was going to do something after that in the third round? I mean, in the conference finals, and he's disappearing in the second round, but all of a sudden he would have excelled against the Lakers. Lou Will was playing like garbage, but he would have somehow been better against the Lakers, right? Even though he played terrible in the last two series. Him and Harold were playing terrible. But only thing the Clippers did was allow themselves to be kicked out before the Lakers kicked them out. The Lakers probably would have beat them the same 4-1 because everybody is under the impression that beating LeBron once is somehow the same thing as beating him in the series. LeBron is a basketball savant. You cannot beat LeBron the same way more than once. If you beat him one way, you have to immediately change it. Is what the Heat had to learn. Anthony Davis, they pretty much had a scheme to stop Anthony Davis the entire series. They stopped LeBron for one game. LeBron went back, looked at the tape, figured out what they did that gave him problems, and as the series progresses, LeBron becomes more and more adept, more accustomed to the way that you're defending him. And look at his career. Look at his game ones. By the time he gets to game 5, he's averaging 30. You know why? Because LeBron uses his brain. He understands how to play the game. And when you start to defend him a certain way, he's going to pick you apart sooner or later. It's just a thing of getting there before he does. Even the Warriors in that Warriors series, LeBron James still figured out how they were stopping him. The only difference is he couldn't score as much points as they could. But he still was averaging 30, 40 points at that. I mean, damn near 40 points in that series. So LeBron knows how to use this. So as the time goes on, just the same thing Jimmy Butler. And I think Nick Wright made a really good point this morning, which I was watching. He said, you watch Jimmy Butler play in one game. In that one game he played in, and he looked dog tired, doing what LeBron James does every game. This guy's bending over, huffing and puffing. LeBron and him are going back and forth. You see LeBron is talking, still acting like he's his first quarter. LeBron ain't showing no sign of weakness. Jimmy Butler was blown up. That's what happens. You think you can take on LeBron James' role and just do what LeBron James does? That is not going to happen. That man does superhuman stuff. And that's because he works round the clock on making sure his body is in peak condition. Jimmy Butler doesn't. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying Jimmy Butler doesn't work hard, but he just doesn't do what LeBron James does. And he's not built like LeBron James. So LeBron James is bodying people. I mean, you know, anybody who's ever played basketball, if you know how tired you get Banging is possibly the most tiring thing on the basketball court. And LeBron James does it with impunity and does not even seem to be bothered by the constant contact, constant bumping, constant banging. LeBron James is down there getting rebound after rebound in the midst of monsters. Banging, going up, getting balls, and still giving you 30 on the other end. Still giving you 14 assists, 15 rebounds. I mean, the guy is ridiculous. And anybody who sit up there trying to compare him to Michael Jordan, I mean, like I said, you can say what you want to say. That ship is sailed, in my opinion. I mean, it's sailed. It's gone. Anybody who still believes Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James are people that were gonna believe that are Michael Jordan fans, and it does not matter what LeBron James did. They were never going to do that. LeBron James could have went 10-0 in the finals, and they would have said he had a weak. He played in a weak era. That's why he won. Because anytime LeBron James does something, it's because of the team he's playing. Every time Michael Jordan does something, it's because he's great. So they give the ultimate respect to any and everything Michael Jordan does, and they find ways to undermine everything that LeBron James does. So nobody listens to these people. They're just idiot people. They're going to analyze to the T every single thing that LeBron James does negatively, and they're going to criticize it, and they're going to put it under fine to go. And when Michael Jordan does something and you point it out, they're going to say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know basketball." It's like, no, I do know basketball. That's why I know that what you're saying doesn't make any sense. Michael Jordan was a ball hog who shot a million balls, never passed it, and then when his team needed him the most, when his teammates were in dumps or needed his guidance, his leadership the most, he trashed them. He was an ultimate bad team player who constantly blamed his teammate for every mistake on the court and found ways to absolve himself of all blame. So anybody who's at this point still looking at LeBron James saying that he should have did this and he should have did that. I mean, like I said, there's nothing that man could have done. There's nothing he could have done that would have changed your perspective on the type of player he is. But I'm sorry, that ship has sailed. Ain't no kid now looking at a dude going to 10 finals in 11 years and looking at that as a dude, as not a monster. This guy's beating their best players. This guy is beating their top teams. This guy is the guy that it's synonymous with basketball all over the world. This is a guy who speaks up, unlike your GOAT. This is a guy who speaks up for people like him. This is a guy who does more and is conscious of his role and is a better role model than Michael Jordan ever will be. So to me, I think LeBron James is on another level as far as considering him the GOAT. Like I said, even before, I never thought Michael Jordan was number 2. I thought Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was number 2. I think Michael Jordan is number 3. But that's just because I think when you look at Bird, Magic, you know what I'm saying, Duncan, Kobe, you don't really have, they weren't like, Duncan was the leader of his team, but he wasn't, in my opinion, he didn't do everything. He wasn't the reason. Popovich had much credit for why Duncan won championships as anybody else. Shaq was largely a flawed player who had an immense amount of talent that he squandered. So, you know what I'm saying? After you get past those 3, Kareem, LeBron, and Jordan, you kind of stuck. You know, you got Oscar Robertson. You can kind of mismatch everybody else because then after that, it just comes down to what you find to be important. But when you talk about dominance, there's only 3 players: LeBron, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Jordan. And you could say Bill Russell, but Bill Russell was playing with a league that was primarily, a product of a racist system. And then the first black players that they were allowing to come in who were athletic and good were dominant because they just were racist, and the majority of players in the league were white. So I'm not saying that Bill Russell doesn't deserve the utmost respect for his accomplishment, because he does. because it doesn't make it easier to be an African American at that time playing with largely because you had to deal with stuff that players today don't have to deal with. But as far as on the court, I mean, you can't make the argument that he played the same competition as the rest of the guys in the top 10. But for his era, yes, he deserved to be in the top 10. But I just don't know where. He's definitely not in the top 3, or I wouldn't even put him in my top 5. Magic Johnson, I wouldn't put in my top 5. My top 5 probably would be Jordan. I mean, would probably be LeBron, Kareem, Jordan. Well, number 4? Probably number 4 would probably be Kobe. Because Kobe, now that I've gone back and looked over it now, over what Kobe's done, because I hated the Lakers for a long, long time. But now that I go back and look at Kobe, like some of the things, some of the way the way he passed, the way he did, like, he was a great player to me that was underutilized his passing abilities. Like, he was crazy good passer. I don't know why Kobe didn't play more of a team oriented game, because which he did when he won those back to back championships with Powell. But it's like he still had to score 40, which to me I just didn't understand. But Kobe, I would shudder to say I would put him in my 5, and probably Oscar Robertson would probably round it out. Um, yeah, so I'm trying to think. Well, like I said, all the other players are just products of their era they played in. Wilt Chamberlain, a lot of people throw in there, but I just don't think. I think he was a product of the time. I don't think Wilt Chamberlain is scoring 100 points against today's competition. I just don't see that. Oscar Robertson, I think, game translates better to this time than Wilt Chamberlain does. Wilt Chamberlain was just bigger and stronger and faster than everybody else. All the other big men in the league, which allowed him to dominate. But when he ran against someone like a Bill Russell, who, let's be honest, is not that big of an anomaly now as he was back then. So if that means, like, I think Bill Russell and Draymond Green are the same height. So if Bill Russell gave him problems, I shudder to believe what would have. I mean, I shudder to think about what would have happened to Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, if he played in today's game. Not saying, but he was a beast for his time. That was the game. The game was played the way he played it, so he deserved respect for being a dominant player in his time. But he didn't win championships, and he largely, it was a product of him being bigger and fast. Same thing with Shaquille O'Neal. Um, Underutilized talent with Shaquille O'Neal. He was a lot bigger than Wilt Chamberlain, and he was just a different player at the time. I think if Shaq would develop on the lines of where he was when he was in Orlando, developing more of a well-rounded game, I think he would have probably been the best player of all time. But Shaq never tried to do that. Shaq got fat, rested on his morals, never tried to get better, and ended up becoming a liability on the court. Um, but still, I would still put him in my top 10, but it's just not my top 5. Larry Bird, I probably would put at 6, because Larry Bird is probably, because me, I feel like you have to do a lot of things. Well, Larry Bird did everything. You know what I'm saying? Magic Johnson did everything, but he wasn't a great shooter. So that's why we'll put Larry Bird before Magic Johnson. I'll put Magic Johnson at 7, Larry Bird at 6. And people are like, well, Magic was more dominant than Bird. Yeah, he had a better team than Bird, too. People are like, well, Bird had McHale and Dennis Johnson and I'm like, no, they can't compare them to James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, it's like, come on, you can't compare their teams. And Magic Johnson. I mean, they got 4 Hall of Famers to the Celtics 3. I mean, even though Parrish and McHale were great players, they weren't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy. They weren't as well rounded, and they couldn't do as many things as those guys could do. So I think there's a level of respect that needs to be given to Magic Johnson, but I would not put him over Larry Bird. But the reason why I say those things is because majority of people nowadays are going to look at LeBron James as the greatest of all time, and it burns them up. So they run out anytime LeBron accomplishes something else. They know they're gonna have to hear it. So they try to get ahead of the storm and start getting their arguments out before LeBron actually does things, because then people can't call them a hater. It's like, no, I was saying this before they won. I knew they were gonna win. Well, yeah, but you weren't taking any risk by saying that. By saying you think the Lakers were going to sweep the Heat, it can only go down for the Lakers, because if they don't sweep the Heat, which is highly improbable, you're going to say he underperformed. So if he's supposed to sweep the Heat and they win 2 games, even though LeBron James won, he loses in your eyes because he should have swept them. Because you're idiotic. You don't think about things in the way that you should. You think about it through the prism of Michael Jordan fan, or a racist dude who's mad that LeBron James says Black Lives Matter and I can't breathe, or mad because LeBron James said that Giannis shouldn't have won the championship and Giannis got bounced when LeBron James holding the trophy. Haters. People gonna say what they say. I think LeBron James championship, it shouldn't be undermined, and there should be mad respect for what he actually accomplished. But he won't. It's never to be the same. I tell people this all the time. Arguing with Jordan fans is a waste of time. Everything LeBron James do, they're gonna find a way to undermine, and everything Jordan did, they're gonna turn to mythology and just deify to the point that it's not even worth arguing with. Michael Jordan was a killer. Like I said before, they never have any concrete empirical data to back up what they're saying. It's all opinion and fanfare. Oh, he was a killer. You can't compare him to Jordan. Jordan was this and Jordan was that. It's like, but all statistics that you point to that prove Jordan are statistics that are in LeBron's favor. So it kind of seems stupid for you to even argue it. But anyways, I just wanted to come on here and say this because, the Lakers won. Cry about it. You guys are upset about it. Wish you all well, but this is just purely sports. So I'm going to say what I'm saying because I obviously don't, wish ill will on anybody, but I was rooting for the Lakers and they won. And you guys were saying, LeBron, now you guys are trying to find a way to undermine it like you always do. And at the end of the day, I don't care what you have to say about it. LeBron James has 4 championships. And LeBron beat the teams in conditions that no other player had to, with no home field advantage, nothing. He had to beat them he had to beat professionals in a vacuumed open gym. Anybody who played YCMA knows it's a lot easier to sink a shot when there's nobody around. But by comparison, his players weren't hitting shots. But all those players who were supposed to benefit from it being an empty gym, like your Duncan Robinsons, your not Jamal Murray, but who's that other guy, that Moore guy for the Nuggets, hitting shots that he would never otherwise hit. All those guys were hitting shots because they were playing in an open gym. LeBron James, on the other hand, his team was not hitting shots. His supporters are largely shrunk. You take out defense. Offensively, KCP did his thing, but KCP always does his thing. He was doing that before they even went into the bubble. So, regardless, I just want to say that, peak game, understand, respect the legend, when you see one, and stop hating. Because that, to me, is just, you're going to be a miserable person trying to find a reason to undermine what LeBron James does. Because every time y'all guys say he can't do something, oh, he's in the East, he comes to the West, runs through that, no problem. Oh, well, the West is the bad conference now. Wait, what? Then he gets to the championship against the Eastern Conference people that you said the East is now better than the West, and he's beating the East 4-2. Then all of a sudden he should have won. But you just said the East was better than the West. Now the East is done. Okay, we need to stop. Okay, you're just sounding stupid at this point. You just sound dumb. Well, he didn't have to play the Clippers because the Clippers lost and were playing terrible before they lost. They should have lost to the Dallas Mavericks. But I guess they didn't. You shouldn't count their championship because they didn't play the Dallas Mavericks either, right? They shouldn't play because Kevin Durant was hurt this year. What? They shouldn't get credit for playing. But Kawhi Leonard got credit last year when LeBron got hurt. Make that make sense, right? LeBron got hurt last year. It wouldn't undermine the Warriors or anybody else, right? But even though LeBron had the Lakers in the third or fourth battling for the third seed at the time he went down, and had beat and was blowing out the Warriors with Kevin Durant on Christmas Day before he hurt his groin with a bunch of young players. Anybody who thinks you were going to beat LeBron James in a 7-game series, no matter who's surrounding him, did you see that game 4? That game 5. That is LeBron. LeBron is the ultimate queen player. Anybody doesn't know what a queen player is? A queen player is that queen piece. That means they can be whatever you need it to be. It can go diagonal. It can go horizontal. You know what I mean? It can go. It's the queen. It can slide all over the board. It can go in all directions. It can be whatever you need it to be. It can make up for all the deficiencies of your other pieces. That is what LeBron James is. He's the ultimate queen player because majority of people are like Jimmy Butler. They are really good at one thing and then they can do other things serviceably. They can do them well enough. LeBron James is above average in majority of things. So whatever you need him to do, he's going to not only fill in that role, he's going to fill in that role exceptionally. When you need someone to be in the post, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. When you need a slasher, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. When you need a passer, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. When you need a three-point shooter, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. When you need a person who can break down a defense like a point guard, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. When you need someone to lock down a defender yet do it without fouling them by using veteran savvy and understanding the quirks and the habits of the player they're placing, LeBron James is going to do that exceptionally. Stop, Ari. Doing exceptionally. He's going to do that exceptionally. So, the understanding that people need to have about LeBron James is the things LeBron James does. I don't care if LeBron James would have made it into that playoffs last year. The only team that had a hope of beating him was the Warriors. Period. I don't think any other team would have beat him. Maybe the Rockets with Chris Paul, but other than that, no. Because I think by the time they got to the playoffs, he would have gotten the most out of Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and Kyle Kuzma. He would have gotten the most out of them. Just like he got the most out of freaking Jordan Clarkson, Rodney Hood, Jeff Green, and J.R. Smith. He would have got the best out of those 4 players, and that's what LeBron James does. The reason why Alex Caruso was able to shine is because LeBron James is going to get the best Alex Caruso. Because he's going to put Alex Caruso in the best position to succeed. You don't ever see that. You see Alex Caruso handling the ball with LeBron James on the court. Name another all-star that does that. Let a 6'7" guy off the bench control the ball while they're on the court. Letting them play the game any way that they feel like it. LeBron James does that. He got the best out of Dwight Howard. He got the best out of JaVale McGee. All these players, Rondo, all these players, he's going to get the best out of them because he's going to be whatever they need him to be the best player that they can be. He can be a spot-up shooter and or a second person in the mid-range for Rondo to run the pick and roll with Anthony Davis. He's going to stand out. He's going to be whatever. You have to respect his three-point shooting, so it opens it up for Anthony Davis. He's going to make Anthony Davis the best possible player he can be by feeding him the ball. He knows Anthony Davis needs the ball. He knows Anthony Davis needs someone to get him the ball. So LeBron James has no gumption about doing that. He's going to get the best out of every single player on that team. That's what LeBron James does. He heightens and makes He it's almost like that's his super ability, getting the most out of the players he has. No. So Michael Jordan could never do that. Like I said, Scottie Pippen sat out a couple games. I mean, sat out half the season for when he was dealing with his contract situation. And Jordan and the Bulls were struggling. So don't give me no crap about Jordan could have did that. No, Jordan couldn't have. Jordan can't take no bad team to no playoffs. He never did. And every time he came up to a team that was as talented as he was, he lost to him. Every team that had an all-star or more, he lost at least once to him. So, like I said, I think the GOAT debate is over. LeBron is the greatest player of all time. Cry about it and complain about it all you want. It's not going to change the facts. It's not going to change the narrative of all these kids that are going to grow up saying it. It's not going to change the narrative of the young people that are growing up saying it. Keep telling yourself that there's somebody who's under the age of 15 who believes that Jordan is better than LeBron. Keep telling yourself that. If that helps you go to sleep at night. But I guarantee you by the time they hit 24, those very same people will not be remembering Michael Jordan as the GOAT. They're going to remember LeBron. Because LeBron is still at year 17 building on an immensely freaking prestigious career. Like, he's already here. And everybody else is like here. And Jordan is like kind of right there. And he still was second in the MVP vote in the 17th season. So you know he got at least another 3 or 4 years. If you're gonna put that out there to where he's playing 20, 21 seasons, there's not gonna be a record that guy doesn't have. And there's not gonna be a narrative that can be put out to discount anything he does anymore. So eat it. He won. You can try to throw dirt on his championships and like you always do. Nobody takes you guys serious. Everybody looks at you and sees you for what you are, which are haters. Anyways, y'all comment. Let me know what y'all think. All right, y'all. Peace.